Okay, Manjiri, thank you very much for being the first teller today on Monday, December 6, 2021. Please introduce yourself fully and tell us where you're telling from, and please tell us a story.
Good evening, everyone. Good morning. Hello. My name is Manjiri Gogate, and I'm telling from Mumbai. The name of the story is From Mumbai to Bangalore. Here goes. When I was just a little girl, I asked my mother, what will I be? Will I be pretty? Will I be rich? And here's what she said to me. Ke sara, sara, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Ke sara, sara, what will be, will be. Chitra alighted the train. She was very scared. She was traveling ticketless. She went into the corner and sat down with her head downcast. She did not notice the majestic mountains outside, nor the birds chirping as they went home, nor the lush meadows or the swaying trees in the wind. She just kept to herself. Ticket, ticket, you girl, are you traveling ticketless? You will have to get down at the next station. You girls and boys are a real nuisance traveling ticketless. And so the TC took the girl's hand and started going towards the door. Stop. I will pay for her ticket. I cannot have a young girl getting down at the station in the dark. Madam, you will have to pay for her ticket from Mumbai to Bangalore. And so the journey continued. Everybody went to sleep. In the morning, when the train reached Bangalore and Sudhamurthy and Chitra got down along with the other people, Sudhamurthy, who had noticed that Chitra, whose ticket she had paid, was following her, asked her, what is it that you want, girl? Have you run away from home? My new mother beats me. She makes me do all the work and she does not give me any food. My mother and father are dead. Please don't send me back. Okay, come, we will go and sit in the car. And so saying, they both sat in Sudhamurthy's car, and Sudhamurthy took Chitra to the shelter home run by the Infosys Foundation. She requested the matron to look after Chitra. I will pay for her dues. Then Sudhamurthy had to go outstation for some work, and when she returned, she went to meet the matron at the shelter home. How is Chitra doing? Oh, she is doing very well, madam. She is very hard working and she helps the younger children too. Let us enroll her in a school. I will pay the fees. Many years passed and Chitra blossomed into a young and beautiful girl, very hardworking. And soon she completed her graduation and got a good job. They also sent her to the US for work. After some years, Sudha Murthy had to go for a conference sent by the Kannada Association. After the conference in San Francisco, She went to pay her hotel bill. Your bill has already been paid, madam. What? Who paid my bill? I don't know anybody here. Suddenly she noticed Chitra in a corner. Chitra, what are you doing here? Chitra came forward. She and her fiancé John had come to the hotel, and imagine her surprise and also joy at seeing her mentor. She came forward and touched Sudhamurthy's feet. This is my fiancé John. We are soon to be married. John too touched Sudhamurthy's feet. Did you pay my bill? Why did you pay my bill? You are soon to be married. You have a young life ahead of you with many expenses. Madam, many years back, somebody paid my ticket from Mumbai to Bangalore. And so saying, Chitra came forward and hugged Sudhamurthy. Sudhamurthy too smiled and left. When I got children and they asked their mother, what will I be? Will I be handsome? Will I be rich? And I told them tenderly, Ke Sara, Sara, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Hey, Sara, Sara, what will be, will be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Wonderful. So that young lady was very lucky.
Very lucky.
So that story was written by who?
The story is written by Sudhamurthy.
So is it a true story?
It's a true story, yes. It's
Ah.
taken from the book, um, The Day I Stopped Drinking Milk. And in that, she writes about various people she came across, and all of them she has helped in some way or the other.
Did she help many young people or just one?
She did, yes.
And was
She's,
she was working with Infosys?
yes. Uh, in fact, her husband Narayan Murthy and she, along with some others, they started Infosys.
Oh.
But then she took a back seat once later and started teaching in an engineering college.
Mm-hmm. But that's why she took her to that Infosys home for young people.
For young people, yes.
All right, anybody, any comments, questions? I thought the song was very nice. Oh, Joyce, go ahead.
I thought it was a great story of paying forward. You know, you see people, for instance, here in the grocery store or something, every once in a while, somebody will pay for something that you are in line, or pay for your groceries, and they just pay it forward and not think about their backstory, but pay it forward. And I thought that was a good example of that.
The story resonated with me because I feel that society has given us so much and we should also give back to society.
Right.
But I feel also we cannot depend on the generosity of individual wealthy people. It should be built into society. You know, the social safety net should be there for everybody, not just the very lucky few.
That's true.
Yeah, one thing I would like to say, when Sudha Murthy is writing, they're so down to earth, and you can actually, whenever I read it, I feel like I can hear her talk. It's such straight, simple words. I just love it, and I should say, when I heard you tell the story, I felt the same way. So
Thank you.
I could
Thank you.
hear her talk actually.
Thank you. It's true. Yeah.
I
I'd
thought,
like to oh,
go ahead, Rinah.
no, I like the way you included the song, and the song uh, says it all, where the future is not ours to
As to
see.
see.
And
Yeah.
it really, it fit at the beginning and then at the end as well. It was lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
How did that song come to mind? Have you known about that song for a long time?
Yes, it's. I like that song a lot, and I feel that finally, destiny plays a very big role, and it's not just like what. I mean, you also you can work hard and you can do your bit, or people do help you, but finally, I think destiny also plays a very big role in who we are.
Mm-hmm. I think there was an actress in the USA named Doris Day.
Doris Day, that's right.
Yeah, her recording of it was the most famous.
Yes.
It was in a movie, The Man Who Knew Too Much by
Ah.
Alfred Hitchcock.
Ah.
Yes, the man who knew. Yes.
James Stewart, yeah, I think. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I also loved your singing because the song fits so well, and I think also the message, it doesn't take big things. It doesn't even take money. And I think I'd like to get back to what Eric said in the beginning about the Corona situation. Sometimes I think, I live in a big city and people normally don't say hello unless they're really close neighbors. And I think that has changed a little bit. And sometimes just giving a smile or asking a neighbor, how are you doing, and so on, it makes such a difference.
Yes.
And until our societies have become just enough, which might still take a while, I think it's always up to us. So thank you very much for this story.
Thank you so much.
So Moira, you feel that as a result of the pandemic, people are a little warmer now and when they meet each other socially?
To some extent, I think so. Yeah, I think not always, but sometimes you move a little bit closer. You appreciate the encounters, even if they're on Zoom, or the small things, because the big things are not possible at present. So you appreciate the smaller gestures more. I think so. Sometimes I observe it.
I've
noticed that too when I've been walking the street. I have a dog, and I see a lot more people being open and smiling and talking that didn't happen before the pandemic. So I agree with you 100%.
Mm-hmm. I've been preparing a story for telling it and working with it. The Christmas Carol, the story written by Charles Dickens, which has become, a kind of a folk tale, even though it was written by an individual. The name of the main character, Scrooge, has just become a part of the English language. And the story is so well known. And this reminds me of this because, he begins miserly and shut off and angry at everybody. And then he has these three visions of the past, present, and future, and how things will be going in a bad way if he continues the way he's going. But then he wakes up on Christmas morning and he realizes he has a chance to change. It's not over. and he changes. And I cry when I tell that part of it. All right, well, shall we?
Eric, when are you going to tell that story? Will we get to hear it?
You'll hear it. I'm preparing to, I'm doing a workshop coming up with my wife, Magdalene, who's a psychodrama director. And we're going to do some sessions where I will tell a story and then she will lead dramatic enactments of the story and how the story relates to our own lives. So keep an eye out. There'll be an announcement about that sort of session. Okay, so shall we? Sunita has written. It reminds me of what? I have to open the chat. Let's see. It reminds me of that movie Home Alone and the old man neighbor. Mm-hmm. Okay. We usually have a chance to change our ways up to a certain point. Okay,
Yeah.
shall we move on to the next story? Okay, Devina, you are here.
Yes, hi.
Hello. Okay, Devina, please introduce yourself and tell us where you're telling from, and please tell us a story.
Hello, everyone. I'm Devina Rijhwani, and today I'm in Mumbai, and today I'm going to be sharing Tarred Wings by Alison Quaid. And here goes my story. Once upon a time, above the crystalline waters of a faraway ocean, lived a bird named Ginger. Her soft white feathers covered with brown speckles soared high in the sky, free of clouds. As she made her soul-tickling loops in the salty air, her wings vibrated with glee. Her brothers and sisters zipped around her, chirping good-natured challenges. Catch me, Ginger. Race me, Ginger. Ginger took on each challenge with a roller coaster speed, dipping and diving until the ill-fated day of their life. Unaware of the dragon, hunched motionless, hidden on a rock. On that particular day, the dragon was grumpy because the witch's brew hadn't filled his stomach. Ginger, who was gliding slowly, her chest all puffed up with victory, she called to her brother, "I win again." And her siblings alighted on the beach to rest. Ginger was still in the sky when, at that moment, the dragon unfolded his enormous leathery black wings and flew towards Ginger's thing, so like a vulture, and said, "Sing for rockers. I'm hungry for roasted meat." And unleashing his fiery breath on them, poor tiny birds had only time to gasp. Ginger was watching all this from the sky. She couldn't do anything. She just had to run from there, fly away from there. As she flew, she reached in a deep, dark cave, gasping for air. She nestled on a rocky floor, trembled, sobbing for her family. She was all alone now. In spite of her grief, she noticed a small pool of black, gooey water. She got an idea. She hopped, dipping her wings, rolling herself again and again until every white feather was covered with that gooey substance. She thought, this is a good disguise from the dragon. Getting free from that tarry, gooey substance wasn't easy. Exhausted and tired, Ginger fell asleep. Next morning, when she woke up, she couldn't flap her wings. The tarry substance had stuck them together. Her heart hammered so fast, she thought she would die there and then. She took deep breaths. She calmed herself and she thought, maybe this is the best way. So what if I can't fly? Maybe I can swim. At that moment, whoosh of enormous wings flapping above Ginger in the sky. She trembled. She hurried. But the dragon couldn't see her. Her tarred wings blended well with the rocks. She hurried until she reached the lake. The dragon was out of sight. She was hungry, so she fished to feed her hungry belly. She was interrupted by an old grandma duck, and she said, "Excuse me, would you mind sharing your catch a bit with me and my grandchildren? We hadn't had much luck today. In exchange, you could stay with us as long as you want. But we'll need your help with fishing." Ginger was very happy to help, and she gladly agreed. Ginger was as agile in water as she was in the clouds. She dipped and she dived, swiftly and easily. Every day, she caught dozens of fish for the little ducklings, and time passed. Now the little ducklings were grown-up ducks. One such day, Ginger was just looking at the sky and she saw a flock of white birds. They were soaring in the sky, doing their crazy aerobatic moves. Ginger thought about how she would soar in the sky and do those crazy moves. And a tear rolled down her thin beak. Would she be able to fly again? She hadn't felt alive for years now. That night, when she was sleeping, she dreamt that she was soaring in the sky, doing those moves and enjoying, and she was happy with those flock of white birds. Next day, early evening, when Ginger was coming back, swimming back towards the shore, she heard unpleasant sounds, someone calling out for help, and she looked back and she saw Grandma calling for help, crying out for help. And huge alligator was speeding towards her. Ginger just went right in the lake, swiftly swimming to help Grandma. And when she looked into alligator's eyes, she remembered the time how the dragon had, with her fiery breath, made roasted meat out of her siblings. There was anger, there was pain, and she was determined to save Grandmother. At that moment, she saw a rope floating on the surface of water. She just took that and swiftly circled around the alligator's mouth. And the alligator's mouth shut. She quickly helped Grandmother to reach the shore. All the ducks thanked her, circled around her. At that moment, something magical happened. Her tarry substance fell off. She was free. She could flap her wings. All the ducks told her, "Go, fly." She was hesitant, but then her inner voice told her, "Come on, Ginger, fly, soar into the sky." And she did that. She flew. She did all her aerobatic moves. And then she joined flock of white feather birds. From the ground, the ducks thanked her and told her, "All the good luck is with you." And she thanked and she flew away. Thank you. I hope you'll like the story.
Okay, thank you very much. So when the tar came off her wings, did her wings stay dark colored or they became white again?
No, they were white again, and she could see her brown speckles on them.
Uh-huh. But she put the tar on her wings in the beginning to be invisible to the dragon, right?
Yes, yes.
So then I guess near the end she was not afraid of the dragon anymore. She was not concerned about the dragon.
She was not concerned because she had just come out of that fear.
Mm-hmm.
When she faced the alligator, she had now the courage,
Mm-hmm.
to take that kind of action and, save someone. She felt that she's over fear.
Mm-hmm. I personally, I was thinking that even though the tar would go away, the stickiness would go away, that her wings would remain dark color, so she would remain camouflaged against the dragon. That was my idea, but that's not the way it happened.
After that, the dragon didn't come into the picture, right? When the ducklings grew up, I mean, we didn't see the dragon there. I think the dragon had vanished, right?
Uh-huh.
Like that?
The dragon, I guess, was replaced by the crocodile.
So she she actually moved away from that area. You know, she hurried and she moved away, and she was now near some lake, and the dragon was on the ocean side, and she was near the lake. And
Mhm.
that's where she saw these flock of white feather birds.
Mhm.
And then she moved.
Hmm.
You all guys can imagine.
Mhm.
That,
That is actually a story element, a motif, as it's sometimes called, that I've been running into a lot lately. This story element that a character, when she spontaneously does something, forgetting her fears and her doubts, then her physical limitations fall away, because she is no longer self-conscious, she is no longer self-doubting. This comes up in that story, that the handless maiden, where she ends up, it's a long story, but she ends up having silver hands. But after a long period of healing and living alone in the forest with her child, when her child falls in the, oh, somebody is giving some interference, so I'm going to mute some people. Yes. She's with her child in the forest living there, and her child falls in the water in a river. And she leaps and, reaches out and grabs her child, forgetting that she doesn't have hands, forgetting that she's wearing these silver hands. And she catches the child and picks the child up, and at that moment, the silver hands fall off and her real hands regrow. So it's a kind of, in a fairy tale, these things can happen.
Yes.
Right, because matter can transform according to emotional changes. And also, there's a Jewish story that I forget. I guess it's I forget the character, but there's a character who has a circumcision, and he's laid up in bed because it's very painful. You're supposed to have a circumcision right after you're born, but this character had one later in life. His great unhappiness was that because he was in bed, he couldn't invite people home for dinner. Because this particular character loved to invite people home for dinner. Just strangers, he would invite them home. One time he saw at the window some people traveling by, and he just jumped up and ran to the window and invited them to come in. And that at that moment he healed.
He healed.
Yeah. So I think Raphael the angel was involved. Maybe Raphael was disguised as one of the people, one of the strangers. So when the man invited them, spontaneously healed. So this is a story element that comes up in many stories.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it means that, well, I guess it's obvious. When someone is so, optimistic and not self-conscious and not concerned about baggage, when you just do something because you have to do it with joy and with optimism, it changes everything.
Absolutely. Also, what I liked about the story is that while she's facing challenges, or whatever she's facing at that point of time, she's taking actions to move forward. And, in facing so many challenges, her family was gone, but still there was no bitterness in her, behavior. She was still kind and helpful and caring. At times, while we're struggling and we are in that challenging situation, we at times become stressed, and at times we become very bitter in life. So this is what I took back. It took back was to be kind and caring, whatever the situation is, like whatever happens to us. So yeah, that's
Yes,
what I took back.
both the stories we've heard so far have a little bit similar to Cinderella, who begins in a difficult spot, but as you say, does not get bitter, and eventually magical things happen to things work out. I found it interesting the way the bird decided to roll in the tar, which that's giving up beauty in a sense, and certainly giving up the ability to fly. So she's giving up a lot to survive. So she made that mature decision to do the necessary for survival, even though it meant giving up so much. As far as she knew, she was giving these things up permanently.
Can I say something about the way the story was told?
Of course.
Devina, I felt as if you were almost telling a personal story. You were so there in the story, and you were so, you presented each character so distinctly, and the feelings and the excitement and the fear. Your face was just, it was a story all by itself. It was fantastic. I felt as if I was about 4, 5, again, just listening, like enraptured by, just taken by your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Joyce?
Yes, I agree. But I felt like it was so immediate that I was looking through Devina's eyes and I could see the birds. Her description was wonderful, but I could see it because she could see it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So I would just like to add why I was touched by the story was somewhere down the line, I felt my life also had these tarred wings attached to me, and I was not able to come out of that. And when I started, my daughters are grown up, and when I had time for myself, I did this teacher's training course, and then I got into storytelling, and my mentor, Gitanjali Kaul Shetty, when I did her secret passage, I'm again like Ginger soaring high in the sky, and every day learning and growing. Thank you.
Okay. So now we will proceed to the next teller. That's Priya. You're here.
Yes.
And by the way, everybody, it's your choice when you're listening if you want to stay in gallery mode or if you want to pin or spotlight the teller for yourself. I hope everybody knows at this point, after a year and a half or more of the pandemic, of the Zoom pandemic, that on the upper right corner, there's a little thing that says view. And if you click on that, you can choose speaker or gallery. Gallery makes all the little rectangles. Speaker will magnify the speaker, but if somebody else coughs or touches their mouse, it'll go to that person. So if you don't want that possible interruptions, what you can do is choose spotlight. And the way you do spotlight is on the speaker, the person who's speaking, on their little rectangle, on the upper right of their rectangle, those three little white spots you click, and you can go down and choose spotlight or pin. I guess pin is like speaker in that if you pin somebody, it will be enlarged, but I'm not sure if it will change if somebody else makes a sound. But if you choose spotlight, that one person will be enlarged no matter what happens, for sure. So I am choosing pin when a storyteller gets going, just for the sake of the recording. But it's up to you if you want to see everyone's reactions as it's happening. And by the way, you tellers, what I really recommend is, as you're telling, leave it in gallery view, move your picture to the bottom, because you don't really need to see yourself as you're talking, and move up to the top row center the image of somebody you really want to tell to. See, Zoom now allows us to drag people's images around, drag and drop. So just like in a theater or a classroom, the person who's front row center is the one who gets the most attention from a storyteller. Likewise here, it's top row center. So you can move the image of someone who you want to especially tell to the top, which is just below the camera. And then if you alternate between looking at that person and the camera, it could be good. As we all know, the difficult thing about video conferencing with eye contact is that if you look at people's images below the camera, we'll all see you looking downward, which is not so much fun. See, now I'm looking at someone's image and I seem to be looking downward, right? That's a downer. Now I'm looking at the camera, so I'm giving you the sense of eye contact, but I can't see anybody, which is not fun for me. So you have to work out a compromise of what's enjoyable for you, which is to see people, and what's enjoyable for your listeners, which is for you to see nobody and for you to look into the camera. But for the sake of everybody and the recording, you do want to look in the camera a lot. And so that's why I say move the image of someone you especially feel on the same wavelength with, move it to just below the camera, so you can alternate between the camera and the person's image. Joyce, did you want to say something?
Yes, you as host, you have the ability to spotlight. We only have the ability to pin.
Okay, but when I am pinning, I am not changing the picture for you all. Is that correct?
No.
Yeah.
But when
good.
you spotlight, you're changing the picture.
Yeah, I know. I don't spotlight.
Okay.
I don't spotlight because my training, both from Laura Sims, the storyteller, and from Roger Abrams, the scholar, is that the social situation is very important and very interesting.
Right.
So the social situation is everyone's expressions as they're following, and the storyteller is just one more person in the group, not the only person in the group. But it's up to you as you like. Okay, anyone else want to say anything about this technical issues or anything else? No. Okay, so now Priya, are you ready?
Yes. Am I visible to everybody?
Yes.
Ah!
Whoops.
Yeah, because
Okay, wait, I'm gonna put everybody else on mute. Yes. And yes, you're very visible. And so Priya, please introduce yourself and tell us where you're telling from. And please tell us a story.
yes. So good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everybody. And my name is Priya Narayan and I'm from Mumbai. And today I'm going to narrate a personal experience story. The name of the story is A Lighthouse in the Storm. So here is how the story goes. Many years ago, in the city of Mumbai, a tiny angel called as Meera was born. Meera was really very tiny, delicate, and fragile. and she was really underweight. So her challenges started at birth. She was kept in the incubator, and the doctors really hoped that this tiny Meera would make it through. As per their expectations, after a month, Meera showed signs of improvement, and the doctors handed over Meera to her parents with a long list of do's and don'ts. Meera's parents were really very scared to bring up Meera because she was really tiny, and they had so many questions about her in their head. But nature was extremely supportive, and very soon Meera became a very, very healthy and a happy child. Academics, sports, music, theater, art, you name it, and Meera was always there. You would either find Meera in the library, her head buried in a pile of books. Enid Blyton, Nancy Drew, Famous Five, you name it, and Meera had read all the books. Or she would be in the art room, busy painting and sketching in the canvas. Or better still, she would be in the music room with her piano teacher playing the piano and she belting away one song after the other for a school choir. Or Meera would be at the basketball court, all alone dribbling at the ball and playing by herself. Thick black hair, always plaited in two, rosy lips, a fair skin, huge marble-shaped eyes, and a slender athletic body. That is Meera for you. Meera was the center of her family, the apple of her parents' eye, and every teacher's favorite in the school. She was very quiet, very shy, and would often be to herself. You would find her mostly with a book in her hand. Meera was very ambitious and she dreamt of becoming a doctor. And she would be really struggling to study and was very hardworking. Life seemed to be really going very well with Meera, little knowing that there was danger just around the corner. Meera's parents and Meera had gone for an extended vacation to South Africa. And no sooner that they returned back to Mumbai, Meera started getting cold and fever. Monsoon had just begun, and Meera's doctor said it's just a bout of seasonal flu. In came the medication, but Meera's condition just did not improve. The cold turned into a fever which went on raging and burnt Meera's body in no time. Days passed into weeks, but Meera's condition only went worse. Many doctors were consulted and medications were changed, but there was absolutely nothing that could be diagnosed. Meera's condition was so bad that days turned into weeks, yet her fever was stubborn. All her mucous membranes started bleeding, and Meera reached to a point where she couldn't eat or drink anything. For 45 days, Meera was only and only on intravenous fluids. A battery of tests followed, conversations with various doctors, but none could detect what was wrong with Meera. There was no virus, no bacteria, no typhoid, no malaria. There was absolutely no kind of illness that ever existed. That Meera's reports, all her reports were absolutely normal. She was really beginning to be a medical mystery. Her parents were shattered as a once healthy and happy Meera was now lying lifeless on a mat. Meera's grandmother, who was an 80-year-old lady, rushed from her hometown to be with Meera. She not only prayed for her granddaughter, but she also took utmost care of Meera. Meera's parents were really strong. They left no stone unturned and they practically consulted everybody in the city and even outside the city. But what would they cure Meera for? Because none of her reports showed any illness. So what medication would they give her? Things only turned worse day by day. And the day that Meera turned 30, her complete body turned blue and black. And that night, a storm was predicted. Indeed, it was the worst storm ever in the city of Mumbai. It thundered, and there was lightning and torrential rains. And Meera's parents took her to the most skilled pediatrician as their last hope. The doctor, an elderly doctor, just had a mere glance at the reports and another glance at Meera. He nodded his head and said, "I'm so sorry. This case seems to be very, very different. It is somewhat beyond medical apprehension. All her reports are absolutely normal. I'm so sorry, but I think we should stop all her medications and let her pass away peacefully, as this is beyond our help." The doctor winced in pain as he said these words, as he was telling these words to the parents who had their only child lying lifeless in front of them. With a heavy heart and with tears in their eyes, Meera's parents took her back home. And that night, it rained and it poured, as if the skies were already mourning the loss of little Meera. There was only teary eyes, and all the relatives and friends had been informed of this unfortunate event that was to happen the next day. Everyone seemed to be shattered, except Meera's grandmother. Meera's grandmother happened to be a very, very strong and staunch lady. She went to Meera's mother and said, "You go to the temple at the house, the altar, and you pray to our family deity. Surrender Meera to her, and I'm sure a mother's prayers will never go unanswered." As a last resort, Meera's mother went to the altar, heartbreaking and sobbing, she prayed. She prayed that, "Oh mother, I surrender my darling daughter to you. Please do a miracle and save her." As she sobbed, she slept on the floor, and everyone else spent a sleepless night. That night, Meera's mother had a dream. And in that dream, there was a large lake filled with black waters. There was a figure wearing a black cloak, drowning Meera inside the water. And all that was visible was Meera's fragile hands above the surface of the water, struggling and asking for help. All of a sudden, she sees a goddess dressed in a red sari and the most beautiful jewelry. Her face shone brightly, and her eyes were a sea and ocean of compassion and love. She gently and firmly pulled Meera up and lay her on the ground, and within minutes revived Meera. Meera slowly opened her eyes, and she and the goddess exchanged the most heartwarming smiles. Meera's mother was shocked and startled, and she opened her eyes. And she realized that she was nowhere but right at the floor. It was already dawn, and the sun was just peeping out. The birds were chirping, and today there was no trace of the storm that was there the night before. Nature seemed to be singing a different song altogether. Everyone rushed to Meera's bedside with 1,000 conversations happening in their heart and mind. And much to everyone's surprise, Meera slowly opened her eyes. For the first time in 3 months, Meera smiled and said, "Amma." That was the birth of a new life. Meera survived post her medication was stopped. And later on, it was diagnosed that Meera had nothing but seasonal flu. Wrong medication proved to be hazardous, and it resulted in a syndrome called a Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which left Meera with a delicate health. Meera happened to be in the fortunate 20% narrow bracket of people who survived this rare condition. Unfortunately, the tear glands of Meera's eyes were damaged, and she was only left with 20% of tear glands, leaving her with a lifelong visual disability. But Meera was a fighter, and she decided to fight back. At the fragile age of 13, she got up, she rose again, she finished her education, she did her post-graduation, and she worked with the leading institutes as an educator. She couldn't be a doctor, as her parents would never ever dream of sending the darling daughter outside to study. But Meera continued to forge ahead. She got married, and today Meera is 40 years old. She is not only a mother, she is a wife, she is a loving homemaker. She is a writer who writes with every word meant to inspire others. She is a storyteller and an educator who seeks the heart and soul of each and everybody who is there in her audience. Meera today still goes through a lot of challenges in her personal life. She is also a leader in the spiritual practice that she follows. Being a leader, she knows that she has a responsibility to lead others through their pain, to be a torch bearer, and she always strives to be a shining sun, no matter what. Each time Meera is boggled down by her physical condition, each time she gets a question in her mind, why me? Meera constantly reminds herself to be grateful. She knows that she has a purpose to fulfill, and that's why she is among the fortunate 20% who is there to be alive and to fulfill the purpose in her life. And as many people always call her, she is truly a lighthouse in the storm, always being a torch bearer for others in pain. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And you said this was a personal experience story.
Yes, this is my own story.
Mhm. Hmm. So the turning point was it was a dream that Meera's mother had of the goddess.
Yes, yes, she did have that dream.
Hmm. And in the dream, the mother went to a lake. Is that correct?
Yes, in the dream, she saw a lake and she saw me drowning in the lake. And then a goddess comes and pulls me out and revives me back. That's what she saw in the dream.
Mhm. So it's a great mystery how your mother's dream, in which you appeared, or an image of you appeared in your mother's dream, how that could change you in real life.
So I am still considered as a medical miracle. So the doctors who treated me, especially even now my ophthalmologist, when I go to him, he says, I mean, do you know you're so lucky you can still see, you still have vision. So they still say that I am a medical miracle. So I think I am very grateful that God has given me an opportunity to live again. So there is something greater that I have to do for life, for people. So yet to discover that purpose, but on the way. And one of the reasons that I chose to my platform, I think from the past 2 to 3 weeks, I have been writing the script and practicing it till I felt, yeah, now it's enough. So the reason was, I think, because since the past 2 years, everybody has been facing so many challenges because of the situation. And because of COVID. So many lives have been lost. Health, finances, relationships. I think every area of people's lives have got affected. So I thought if I could even inspire just one person, then I think it's the beginning of the purpose being solved.
Yes. Well, many people who caught COVID have this long COVID where they recovered in part, but some of the symptoms remain. So that is similar in a way to your situation. You did not have COVID. You had some other mysterious.
I got COVID in April, and again,
Oh.
so for me, I happen to be so critical that I just can't walk up to a doctor and say, okay, I have a cold, so give me medicine. Because now a wrong medication or a wrong line of treatment could either mean a loss of life, or it could either mean total blindness. So I need to be very careful with my health, which I try to be. But again, I bounced back from COVID. So again, that's another indication from the universe or God that there's still more for you. So you can't give up. So it's just like, I keep going. I mean, I don't get depressed. I mean, I have gone through the cycles where maybe by way of human nature, I get into the comparison mode that, others are normal and I am not. But then I remind myself that I am the chosen one, maybe for a different purpose. So I tell myself, Priya, get up, keep going. So, yeah.
Well, many of us, if we do survive a trauma, we know a lot about that situation, so that we are in a position to help others with it.
And I feel that a lot of people, I think, I'm grateful to a lot of people who have come my way. So for me, whenever I've had people who've shut doors saying, oh, you have such a big problem. You're at the wrong place. You can't do anything because of the vision problem. Not only everyday life becomes a challenge. When it comes to career, opportunities are really narrowed down because I can't use gadgets, I can't use computers. And okay, I can use them to some extent, but not to the extent that others can. But there have been people who have been really, really, really wonderful. And they said, okay, fine. I mean, this is a problem, but we can work it around. We'll give you the support. And that's where I think last year I did 80 workshops in storytelling alone. And I think it's only and only because of people who were willing to support. I think there are still a lot of wonderful souls on earth who are really amazing.
Excellent. You have a lot of willpower.
Yes.
First thing. And positive thinking. That's why it helped you a lot to overcome all these kinds of problems.
Yes, because I think it's a matter of choice.
Yes.
Because there have been times when I feel like, why me? And I want to just give up and say, I don't want to live this life. And there have been instances where I have asked my mom, why did you have that dream? Why did it really, get me back alive? But then, yes, I mean, when that's just a temporary phase, I mean, ultimately it's a choice that I think all of us have to make at the end of the day, whether I have to live this life. I mean, for me, okay, health is a challenge, and I'm sure everybody on earth has got some challenge or the other. So it's up to an individual. Okay, I mean, I have this challenge. What do? Do I continue to shut myself and crib about it? Or do I rise up and say, okay, I need to fight. I need to go ahead. That's the choice that each one of us makes at the end of the day. That's an inner struggle that we have to win each day.
And thanks to your mother for giving you such cooperation and inspiration to you.
Yes.
And
mother and father both.
Yes, mother and father, both parents.
Yeah.
First guru, anyhow, mother. Second guru is father.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
And I would say definitely, because my father was always very protective. So for me, I was like a doll in a glass shell, always very protective. And it's my mother who really pushed me and said, go and do whatever you need to do.
And Priya, your husband too.
Yes,
Your
yes.
husband is also supportive.
Husband and
So
my
that-
son is also sitting right next to me today,
Yeah.
listening to my
So they're
story.
also supportive. So
Yes.
such a wonderful, lovely, it's just a goosebump for me. Tears, really, it's just fill my eyes. It's just rolling, Priya. There's a tight hug to you, though from a distance. Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Okay. Shall we proceed? Here we go. Okay, Meera, are you ready? Meera in Bangalore.
Yes.
Okay, so please introduce yourself. You are telling from Bangalore. And
Yes.
please do tell us a story.
Very good evening to all of you. This is Meera Venkatesan from Bangalore, and I have to say the goosebumps are still there from the previous story. So I just hope I'll be able to do justice to mine. This is a story which is a story written by me, and I thought that this will be suitable for this topic, and that's why I wanted to share this. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. The hand ticked its way towards 12, as it had for so many years in the past. More than 60 years. It was the clock which you had to wind to make it run. Perhaps many people haven't even seen it today. But this clock, just like its owner, the retired postmaster, Ranganath, had rarely ever lost time or gained time. He was a perfectionist and gave a lot of importance to time. No wonder. This was the clock he had bought with his first salary. And the day he had bought the clock was a great celebration in the household. And for a long time, as the clock ticked, everyone talked to it. People wanted to talk to it to find out whether it was late for work, whether it was late for the loved ones to come home. What time was it? Was it time to study? Was it time to sleep? Was it time to have fun? Now, with clocks and watches and time at every nook and corner, wherever you see, on every smart device, no one looked at this clock anymore, no one except its owner, Ranganath. Ranganath had had a stroke 4 years back and had been confined to his bed. And for him, life was all about doing things on time. So 6 a.m. was waking up time and 11 a.m. was medicine time, which was what he was waiting for. He had the luxury of time with him. It didn't matter if he had to wait 10 minutes to have his medicine on time. This couldn't be said about the other people in the household, though, one of whom was literally screaming at him. Sir, you don't have to wait 10 minutes. You can have your medicine now. I have so much work to do. I have to dust the whole house. Madam will come and shout at me. Her voice did not even break the barrier. Ranganath had heard it too many times. He didn't grudge her. She was a very kind person, but she didn't have time. Well, he had. He continued to look at the clock and told her, My dear Alice, wait, the clock will get angry with me if I take my medicines earlier. Alice said, eccentric old people. It was at that time that Ranganath's granddaughter Shraddha walked into the room with a pile of papers in her hand and deposited them right next to him. Tata, she said, as she called her grandfather, Tata, you know what? We have a project in school. reuse and recycle. So you know what we have to do? We have to tear all the papers from our old books and make new ones. Oh, said Ranganath. He quite liked the idea of doing any kind of work. No one ever asked him to do any work anymore. But such a big book? No, Tata. This is for all my friends. I told them that my grandfather is a perfectionist and he will do the job great. And so I am going to ask you to make books for all my friends. Ranganath was really happy. Yes, yes, he said, as I've always been telling you, the 3 P's. What are they, Shraddha? Perseverance, prayers, and perfection. You know, I want to tell you a story. This was in the time when I was just an assistant postmaster in a small post office, and your boss told that if you want to learn perfection, learn it from Ranganath. Ranganath looked at her. He didn't like his story being robbed. But wait, I have another story to tell. Tata, I have to do my record. I have so much college work to do. I'm not going to do your work if you don't listen to my story, he told her, trying to make her sit for a short time. Tata, she said, if you don't do my book, my friends will... And she walked out of the room. What? Shraddha? What did you say? They will kill me. They will kill you? What? Now Ranganath was really agitated. He had heard about this generation, that there was so much violence. But this was too much. Someone getting killed because they don't make books. What is this? He called out, Shraddha, come here. She didn't come. He picked up his phone and rang his son's number. Like many people of that era, he was quite surprised when the call actually went through and his son picked up the phone on the other end. Krishna, your daughter, she says her friends will kill her if she doesn't make a book. You find out what those friends are doing? Is she in some bad company? There was a short pause on the other end, and his son said, Wait, Appa. And he could hear footsteps. He was taking action. In some time, his son's voice came loud and clear on the phone. How many times have I told you not to bother me with such things in my office? Don't you understand that I have such important things to do? Please call me only if it's something really urgent. Urgent? Isn't your daughter dying urgent for you? What is urgent for you? Is it urgent for you only if your father is dying? He was now panting. His 11 a.m. medicine completely forgotten. He put down the phone. Alice had lost her case and walked out. The phone rang again. Maybe it was Krishna trying to say sorry. He picked it up. No, it was his granddaughter from Singapore. Tata, she said, you know what? I made that brinjal curry which you just love. He always loved listening to her voice. She was his favorite, his first after all. Oh, that's so nice. You know, whatever this Alice makes, it all tastes the same. He told her on the phone, you know, I have one recipe which your grandmother told me. He was interrupted by the wail of a baby. Oh, Tata, said his granddaughter, this idiot, this kid, he keeps waking up at all times. No, don't tell such things about the child. You shouldn't say such things. You are a mother. It is your duty. He started telling, and the child was wailing louder. Oh no, Tata, the baby has fallen down. I'll talk to you later. What? What happened? The baby fell down? Nothing. The baby fell down. I'll talk to you later. She put the phone down. Nothing. The baby fell down and she says nothing. His disquiet only increased. He looked at the clock. which was right there in front of his eyes, ticking, and talked to it. What a funny thing time is, my dear friend. All I have is lots of it, but nobody else seems to have any. What do I do with all this time that I have? He took up the papers and cut them neatly, the perfectionist that he was, and piled them neatly on the bed next to him, and waited for his lunchtime. It was evening when his daughter-in-law came by. She was a HR professional and a very, very successful one at that. For her, juggling time and time management was nothing that she could avoid. It was something she had to do. If someone could understand Ranganath's penchant for time, it was her. So she, as she always did, came in at 8 and came down and sat next to him and said, "I heard you caused some commotion today." "I'm just a silly old man. I've spent all my time doing things for others. I don't know now what I have to do. I can't even take care of myself." Isn't that true for everyone who is old? Why don't you just enjoy your time? She asked. Enjoy my time? They say even nectar in excess is poison. Time is poison for me. It causes me indigestion. Relax, Abba, she said. I'll talk to you later. I have a call at 8:15. I know. You can go. She stood at the door and looked at him. Do you need anything? Why don't you give me some of your time that seems to be so valuable and take some of mine? You know that we care about you. It's not that I know. It's just that when we spend time on our children, it's an investment. But when children spend time on us, I guess it's an expenditure. That's why it doesn't have any value. She stood at the door to argue, but time was not something she had. So she walked out to attend to her call, promising herself that she would make up for it. None of his siblings and none of his children and grandchildren had this chance, to promise in a few days. They had been expecting it. He had been sick. But still the family grieved. He was well loved by everyone. He had given up his life for them. They all came, and soon they all dispersed after the mourning was over. But just before they dispersed, they got a call from the lawyer saying that Ranganath had left a will for them. A will? They were surprised. Ranganath had a lot of love to offer, but money had never been his strong point. And they had all achieved success far beyond what he could ever imagine. What could he have left them? But still, they waited for the lawyer in his room. And the lawyer did come and read out the will. And he told them, Ranganath has left you something over which I am sure no court has jurisdiction. But the will is made legally and it's really up to you to accept it. I would like to read out the will. This is the last will and testament executed in Bangalore on June 1st, 2021 by me, Mr. K.R. Ranganath, son of Mr. K.S. Ramaswamy, out of my own free will and in full disposing state of mind without any coercion or undue influence from anybody. I declare that I am the sole owner of the assets mentioned in this will. Today, I have one commodity that all my heirs lack. That is time. As my age advanced, I had more and more of the time while their assets dwindled. I give, devise and bequeath this prized possession, time, equally to all my children and grandchildren mentioned in this will. I hope this reserve of time that I have given to them by releasing them from my care will help to augment their reserves. They will find some time to waste, some to use, some to love, and some to talk to people like me. I do declare that I hold no malice against them, and I love them all greatly. As for all the assets not mentioned in this will, they are free to dispose it in any way they decide. I bequeath my clock to my daughter-in-law, Jayanti, who will be the executor and trustee of this will. All his heirs sat in silence and looked up at the clock, which had stopped ticking and talking. Would they, in future, make use of this asset that their father had given to them? Only time would tell that. But that moment, they thought about the huge gush of life that we all try to infuse into the tiny space of the hands of the clock, and sometimes how life is left by the side as we go forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Very, very real storytelling in the conversational mode, which is my favorite. So what does that story, what's the essential meaning of that story for you? What's the takeaway for you? Can you boil it down to an essence?
I don't know if I could say essence. So this story actually came to my mind. I do have a lot of senior citizens around me in my house. So it's not that it is not that we do not want to set aside time for them, but they do have a lot of time on their hands, and sometimes there comes a point where they are not able to productively use it. So I was just thinking, what a funny thing this time is. It's not that it's anything different for different people, but I mean, some of us are so compressed for it, and some of us, but it's not that you buy it or anything like that. It's just there, but some of us just don't have it, and some of us have too much of it. So yeah, that was just a thought that. That was a thought behind the story for me.
Anybody? Any thoughts, questions, resonations?
Yes, Eric, I just want to share the way she said, when people are spending time on their children, it's an investment. And when they're supposed to spend the time with the elders or the seniors, it becomes an expenditure, and nobody wants to spend so much when it is not an investment. So beautifully she narrated. I mean, like, each and everything is like a pearl which is ringing in my ear. Thank you so much. Thank you, Meera, for the excellent way of narration of TikTok. And I could imagine the grandfather clock in front of me saying that tick tock, and the pendulum moving, and a senior citizen man looking at it for taking medicine and other things. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Very well told, Meera. And the perils of growing old, I think, were described very beautifully in your story.
Thank you.
Can I just say something?
Go ahead.
It was a wonderful story, Meera. Connected with it totally. I have also been with a lot of senior citizens, and the whole thought about time and how he passed away at the while they really couldn't spend time with him. I was able to connect with that. That was very heart touching for me because I lost my father recently, and it's always that I wish I'd spent more time with him because, like you said, he had a lot of time. He would invite me to all kinds of, why don't we go there? Why don't we go here? And any weddings, any functions, he like, you come with me. No, I want to go. And I would be the one who'll say, no, I have to take care of children. I have to do that, this. But unfortunately, he's not there now. So it just resonated a lot with me. And thank you so much for this lovely story.
Thank you, Ramya.
Yes, excellent, ma'am. Very well told. And time management is very, very important for each and every one of us. So you narrated so well. Hats off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Parvathy, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Very good. Well, please introduce yourself. I must sound like a broken record, right? I say the same thing every time. Tell us where you're telling from, and please tell us a story.
I like the way you say, please tell us a story. I'm just waiting for you to tell that so that I can start my story.
I try to say it differently every time. Please tell us a story. Please tell us a story. Please tell us a story.
Okay. I'm Parvathy Eswaran from Bengaluru, India. Hello, all of you. This time, what I have taken is the poem, the very famous poem written by D.H. Lawrence, The Snake. And where the snake is the protagonist, the poet is the protagonist, and he is thinking his conversation within himself as to what he thinks about the snake and everything. And to this poem, my husband 3 years back, he wrote an alternative narrative where he said, what if the snake is the protagonist? So and the protagonist as a snake also is having a conversation within himself. So I'm bringing narration, bringing both the protagonists having their conversations with themselves, because the topic was conversation, and this came to my mind because I had before I had read about the snake, and when my husband had written this, I was quite thrilled with that. So I thought, why not use this as a narrative as my narration of that. This happened in Sicily. Sicily, you have the Mount Etna, which is an active volcano, and it is very, very hot. And it was one of those hot afternoons when Lawrence decided, I'm feeling really thirsty. Let me go and take some water from the water trough. So he, in his pajamas, he picks up the water jug in his hand and he walks towards the water trough. The water trough is actually beneath the great carob trees. These carob trees are 100 meters huge trees, which you can find along the coastline of Sicily. Now, this particular carob tree was there, and beneath that was this water trough. And he walked down the steps to stop suddenly because he saw there was a visitor. And being the gentleman he was, he decided, let me wait because I'm the second comer. Let me wait and watch. The snake had come from inside, maybe from inside the earth fissure, and it crawled on his belly and kept his throat on the stone of that water trough and bent down to drink the water which had fallen from the tap to a clearance there.
And as it was drinking, Lawrence watched. It was a fascinating sight for him. He saw that the water was going down the throat of the snake and was going through the long body of the snake. He was very fascinated. The snake had come out of the dark bowels of that earth. It's so hot, it's so hot, the snake told himself. And it came out of that. It's time to molt, but I need to drink the water. So he came down crawling and he came to the water trough. And there he saw that man standing beneath that carrot tree. Would he harm me? But then the thirst was too much for him. He decided, let me first drink. And he put his head down to drink, to take gulps of that water. It was so difficult, keeping an eye on the man and also drink. But he drank in gulps. It went in and he could feel the cool of the water inside. Lawrence looked at that snake and he thought, wow, it's looking so beautiful. Earth brown, no, it's earth golden in color. And look at the way he drinks with his mouth straight. It's such a beautiful thing to watch. And the snake looked at Lawrence and wondered. He seemed to be a harmless man. Should I befriend him? Thought the snake. But then his heart told him, man is a man. Be wary of him. But then he looked harmless and he drank some more water. Lawrence looked at the snake and the voices inside him started shouting at him, take a stick and thrash that snake. In Sicily, the black snakes are harmless. The yellow golden ones are venomous. Who taught this to Lawrence? The voices of education had taught him that it was a venomous snake and he had to thrash it. But why should I thrash it? It is doing nothing. I am proud that he has come as a visitor in my water trough. No, said those voices inside his mind. Thrash him, you are afraid. That is why you are not doing this. He said, yes, I am afraid, mortally afraid. But why? Why do you want me to thrash that snake? After all, he's my guest and I'm privileged. He's my guest in my own water trough. The snake looked at Lawrence and saw him looking at him. Will he hit him? If he hits him with the water jug, I'll be killed. But then I will bite him. Ha! Why should I bother? Let me go home. Home, sweet home. Let me worry about this later. And the snake went back, turned and went back into the hole. Just looked back. He seemed harmless. But then the snake went inside. And that is the time Lawrence picked up a log and threw it on that water, into that water trough with a clatter. It didn't hit the snake. The snake had gone in and the last bit of his tail was just outside, convulsed and ran, pulled inside. Oh, what a I despised himself. What did I do? It was Not right on my part to do that. What did that snake do to me? It looked like an uncrowned king on the soil. I should have befriended him. I should have made him my friend. Why did I do this? Oh, these voices of education. Oh dear, why did I do this? So bad, so petty. I lost an opportunity, thought Lawrence. The snake inside. Oh, I thank God I listened to my heart. Man is a man. I thought that man will be my friend. But no, beneath that faith, he had been plotting. I wanted to be his friend. But no, are all men so bad? Will I meet a man who will be good and be my friend?
Thank you very much. So that was from the snake's point of view.
Yeah, the last bit was from the snake's point of view. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of the story. Other, what do you call it? The two sides of the coin, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
The African proverb is there, no? If the lion starts telling its story.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that's based on the story by D.H. Lawrence.
Yes. It's a snake. Yes.
Of course, in the West, snakes are really have a bad name in stories, in mythology, including that it was a snake who gave the apple to Eve in the Garden of Eden. But in India and much of Asia, snakes are much more respected.
True.
They're associated with many important gods and goddesses.
Yeah.
So what was it about that poem that really inspired you to work with it and make a story in relationship to it?
I had read the poem before, and I'd liked the poem. When my written alternative narrative, that also quite some time back. I loved that also. So I thought, what perspectives are so different. A perspective from the poet and the perspective from the side of the snake. So I thought when the topic was conversations, I thought, why not bring these two poems together? Yeah.
So what was it about the original poem that you especially liked?
I liked the story, the way he had written it. I liked it just for the sake of the poem. There was a story sort of thing in that. And there is that feeling of the regret is there in that man, that, man, why are we behaving like that? That feeling comes out in that Lawrence poem also. Yeah. So that touched me a lot. We are behaving in that fashion in many issues, I feel. So, I mean, we take only we are scared, we want to protect ourselves. We never look at what are the other, especially the animals. We never bother about that. But now, of course, lots are changing. People are thinking differently.
Anybody, any thoughts, comments, questions, resonations?
Yes, good evening, sir. I have a question. Eric G.
Go ahead.
Question to ma'am. Ma'am, if you are in the man's position, what would you do? Do you throw the stick or a pole of whatever it is, or you give respect to it, or you love the animals?
No, to be very frank, I wouldn't throw the stick. I would run away from there. I would face the snake. I don't have that much courage either, but neither would I try to hurt it. I would rather try to move away from that, and that would be my reaction to that.
Oh,
I
very
wouldn't,
nice.
I wouldn't
Very
hit
nice.
the.
But you, the way you narrated, very nice, excellent. I felt it. A snake was in front of me and gulping the water. Excellent, very nice. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now we have two more storytellers tonight. For the first time, we are moving out of India. Our first 5 storytellers are in India. And now we have Rinah in Israel and Joyce in the USA, in Kansas City, Missouri. And we'll talk about that, why Kansas City should be in Missouri and not in Kansas. But let's wait for that. So Rinah, are you ready? Oh, you've got to turn your mic on, Rinah.
It was on before at the wrong time. Now it's on.
Good.
Okay. So I think I'm ready.
Yeah, so please introduce yourself and your story, and please tell us a story.
Okay. I'm Rinah Sheleff, and I live in Ra'anana, Israel, which is a town outside of Tel Aviv. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, but I've lived in Israel for many years. And I chose a story that comes in many different versions. Some of you will probably know it from some other version, but this is the one that I chose, and I called it The Taverner's Fun-Loving Daughter. And the story is about a tavern owner who ran a lovely tavern where people used to like to come and hang out, and they would drink something, and they would talk to each other. And the taverner himself was a very charming host and looked after everybody. And he had a good life. He had a wife, and he had 3 children. But then the years passed, and his wife died, and his children grew up, and they helped him out in the tavern. The one son was very good with numbers, and he became the accountant or the bookkeeper, taking care of all the money that came in and went out. The second son was a very creative cook, and also developed all kinds of special drinks that people didn't get anyplace else. And he also had a daughter who used to entertain visitors to the tavern. People would come and sit, and she would fiddle on her fiddle, and she would dance, and she would sing, and she would tell them stories. Well, the taverner felt that he was getting older, and it was time to hand the tavern over to one of his children. But which one? Should he give it to his oldest son, to the middle son, or to the daughter? Who would be the wisest? Who would be the one to bring in customers? Who would really be able to take over this tavern? Well, he decided to put them to a test. He gave each one of them a sum of money, the exact same amount of money, and he said to them, whichever one of you can fill up this tavern, that will be the one who will inherit the tavern when I retire. Well, the eldest son, who knew all about money, and he went off to the farmer next door and he took some of his money and he came back with a wagon and a wagon load of bales and bales and bales and bales of hay and straw, and he piled them up, up in the tavern. And he called his father in to see, and he called his brother in to see, and he would have called his sister in to see, but where was she? She wasn't there. She was with her friend somewhere, playing her fiddle, dancing and singing and telling stories. Well, the father came in and this brother came in and they looked and they said, this tavern looks pretty full. But you know what? You didn't quite make it because there's still a line there. There's still some light coming in just between the ceiling and the wall, and you almost made it, but not quite. So the father said, I will give your brother a chance to fill up the tavern. So the middle son went off to the market, and he came back with a wagon load piled high with eider-down blankets and pillows. And he went into the tavern and he opened up all of the blankets and all of the pillows, and the feathers flew all around the tavern, filling it up. And he called his father in, and he called his brother in, and he would have called his sister in. But where was she? She was off with her friends, dancing and singing and telling stories. Oh, well, they came in and there were feathers filling up the tavern, but as feathers do, they began to settle. And soon the floor of the tavern was covered with feathers, but the tavern was empty. Well, there was nothing to do but to go look for the sister and tell her that it was her turn to fill up the tavern. Oh, they looked all over for her, and they finally found her somewhere far away from the tavern, but they told her, it's your turn. And she said, okay, well, I'm busy now with my friends, but I'll come in the evening and I'll do what I can. So after the sunset, she appeared, the youngest daughter, with a very big box. She walked into the tavern that was very dark, and she took out 5 big candles. And she put one in one corner and one in another corner and the third and the fourth and one smack in the middle. And she lit the candles, and the tavern filled with light. Now, candles don't cost very much, so she had money left over to hire some musicians, and she invited the musicians in, and they began to play. And then people passing by heard the music, and they also came in. And soon there was laughter and dancing and singing and, of course, stories. But the father and the 2 brothers were overwhelmed, and they all agreed that she was the wisest person, the one who could take over the tavern and bring in people and make it a happy, joyful place. And she deserved to inherit the tavern. And so it is to this day that if you go into this tavern, you will see people dancing, singing, and telling stories.
Wonderful. And
I have to thank my son for the music. He did the musical interludes.
wonderful. Okay, so the first two brothers were materialistic, and they took it literally that they should fill every square centimeter or every square inch. But she was more interested in filling the space with light and joy and music, which was not the materialistic approach. But it actually, she had a good materialistic result because it attracted people. And of course, an inn needs to be filled with people finally, paying customers. So she achieved the materialistic good result through her non-materialistic approach.
There you go. I have to tell you that the story is very, very appropriate for the season. This is really a season of lights. And this happens to be the very last day of Hanukkah. So it's like the 8th day. And I thought, oh, this was just perfect timing. And it's, in general, it's holidays and everything is, all the lights are being turned on. So.
In India, we just had Diwali, which is the big festival, one big festival of lights. So I guess we're in the middle of the light season. Anybody else? Any thoughts? Maura?
Yeah, I just loved the story, and of course the music made it perfect. I've heard it several times and was always very nicely told, but it was more like a king's palace, and you sort of brought it down to earth and to real life. And I had the movie in front of it much more, the other version somehow had that sort of moralistic version, like the youngest one is sort of, I know better. And your version didn't have that at all. It was just about the joy of life and of course the light. So I really loved the story. Thank you.
I have to say it's one of my super all-time favorites. I love it too.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it because it celebrates the arts and playing. Whereas, there's a lot of stories like the grasshopper and the ant, where the grasshopper gets put down because the grasshopper is playing too much, and the ants are the heroes because they are hardworking. But it's good to celebrate playing also.
I love the light. I love light. It's so just makes us alive. All those stories of light in winter, they didn't have lights. So I tell some stories from my relatives in Sweden, and they live in the Arctic Circle. So in the winter, it's dark from October. There is no sunlight. And that is, I think that's why in my heart, I just love light. And that's why I loved your story.
There's some story in which a character has like a metal pan and decides to put light in the can. There's a lot of light, so the character closes the top, and the character is very happy that that the character has light in the can. But of course, unfortunately, when later when the character opens the can, there's no light. Uh, so you can't capture light. You just have to enjoy it at the time.
Hmm.
And like you can't capture the time in the other story.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually one more story with in India with Pandavas and the in the Mahabharata, Pandavas and the Kauravas. They're given a test by Dronacharya to fill up fill up the room. So the Kauravas fill up everything, so much they all even garbage, everything they'll fill up, and it stinks, and they open and everything falls on them. But here the Pandavas in their room, they are very, I mean, there's a lot of new sound and they were wondering what are they doing. And then they open the door and they find that it is lit. As you said, no, the lights are lit all over and it is filled. The whole place is filled with light. That is the story. That is another small story of Pandavas and Kauravas. There is a story.
Excellent. You narrated very well. Everybody likes the life, dance, and music. This is the life in the world everywhere. However busy we are, we want all these three. Thank you. I think it is you, the wisest daughter.
The what? I didn't hear that. I didn't
Wisest
get that.
daughter, it's you.
Um,
Wise story, wise daughter.
Thank you. I like
Thank
to
you.
dance and I like to tell stories. It's true.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I found myself dancing and visualizing each part of what you said, especially when you were singing and your son was playing the tune. It was really amazing, really, really amazing. I mean, you made us all, I think, here at India, it's night. So we've all kind of woken up right now to your song and to your story. Thank you.
Thank you. Hmm.
Okay, let us move on to the last story of the evening. And as mentioned, I'm always confused because in the USA, there's the state of Kansas neighboring the state of Missouri. And of course, there is the city of Kansas City, Kansas, but it seems there's also the city of Kansas City, Missouri. So can you clarify for us, are these two different cities?
Yes, they are distinctly two different cities. They are on, but they're very close to each other. There is a river that leads the Kansas River and the Missouri River converge and one way or other. But Kansas City, Missouri is a much larger city than Kansas City, Kansas. And Kansas City, Missouri it was named after the Kansas tribe. Before there was even Kansas, Missouri was a state, Kansas was a territory until the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and Missouri was a state, it gained statehood in 1821 and Kansas in 1858. So I've lived in both cities. I've taught in both cities. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, in near downtown. So I know the city very well. But I've lived in and taught in Kansas City, Kansas.
So
Yeah, people will always ask me if I'm from Kansas because I mean, I don't know of a Missouri City, Missouri.
yeah.
Seems like it should
And
be.
there's certainly no Missouri City in Kansas.
No,
So,
but in Missouri, we do have some odd names. Like we have Paris, Missouri, and California, Missouri. So we have Mexico, Missouri.
So are you Missouri people like grateful to Kansas for that they, you know, that you've taken their name from them, that they've contributed their name for your big city?
Well, I think they took the name after we had, you know, Kansas was a tribe that
Yeah,
was all over. I
really?
don't know.
So Kansas City,
I don't
Missouri.
think Kansas City, Kansas is grateful that we took.
Well,
Or
are you
Missouri
saying that
is
the
not
whole state?
grateful to
Are
Kansas.
you
There
saying
is
the
some
whole state of?
rivalry.
Are you saying the whole state of Kansas is named after Kansas City, Missouri?
No, after the tribe of Kansas.
Yes. Well, first there was the tribe of Kansas, then there
Yeah.
was Kansas City, Missouri, then there was the
Yeah.
state of Kansas.
Yes.
Okay. So the state of Kansas should be appreciative towards you in Kansas City, Missouri, because they are derived from you.
There is a big rivalry. You know
Yeah.
that the reason was the you know, the Civil War actually started in Kansas and Missouri because of the border wars. You know, the Lawrence was burned down, and then there was Order 11 on the Missouri side where was burned down. You know, lots of places, and people had to leave. It's Kansas was more liberal than Missouri. I don't think either state is very liberal now, unless you live in a big city.
And Missouri is known as the show me. Is it the show me state? Is that
Yes.
true? What does that
I
mean?
guess-
You have to. You don't believe it unless you have it in your hands and you can show it to
Right.
somebody. Why
It's
is
like
Missouri
doubting
named like
Thomas.
that? Any idea why Missouri is named like that, or has that motto? The show me state.
You know, I'm not really sure. It may have to do with mules. You know, they're known for their mules too. But I'm not sure. I'll have to investigate that. Maybe
All
next
right.
time I will let you know.
Okay, but at least Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri are in the same time zone, right?
Oh, yes.
Thank goodness.
We're all in central time zone.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, I apologize for going off on sidetrack about all this, but somehow I'm interested in it.
Fun.
Okay, so now please tell us what story you're going to tell, and please introduce yourself. You're a theater director and all. Please tell us about your theater work, and then please tell us a story.
All right. Well, my name is Joyce Slater. You know, it's a very old name. My dad was in World War II and picked up the name in England. I have been in theater all my life, but then I found storytelling maybe 30 some years ago. And so I still have a theater company where I produce plays written by women only. So we used to get plays from all over the world. We've been doing this since 1994. I started in storytelling in, I think, 1990, and I still do both. I have an organization in Missouri called Missouri Storytelling Inc., Motel, and I've been involved with the National Storytelling Network, and you know they're based in Kansas City, Missouri now too, with new offices. So that's a little bit of my story. But my story today is my retelling of a story I call The Mouse Princess. And I like it because it's a Scandinavian story. I am Swedish. I'm part Swedish. I'm part Eastern European. So I chose this story because I visited Sweden, and I felt a real connection there. So I tell this story. All right. Let me begin. Thank you also for being good listeners and listening to my story and all these stories. It's so important that we have listeners. And thank you, Eric, for providing this venue. Long ago, there was a king. Well, he was a good king. He was a fair king, but like, well, like myself, he was old. He knew that pretty soon he needed to turn over his kingdom to a new ruler, and he wanted one of his sons to rule the kingdom. He had three. So his queen said, well, I mean, we have three sons, but none of them are married. And it takes more than one person to rule. You have to bounce things off of somebody else. You can't do this alone. So gather your sons together, yes, and tell them what they must do. So he brought all of his sons together, and he could tell they were already thinking about how old he was and that somebody should take his place. They said, I think you need to go out and find yourself a bride, or at least somebody you can fall in love with and trust and share your dreams. But it is our tradition here that we find our partner by cutting down a tree. And in the direction that tree falls, you journey to find your bride. Well, the first two sons, they had already been seeing someone, and they knew how to fell a tree so that it would fall in the correct direction. And they did that. The first one, he had somebody in another kingdom very close by that he was admiring. And the second son, he was in love with a farmer's daughter in their own kingdom. But the third son, he was a dreamer, kind of like a lot of us. He had never touched an axe. He didn't know how to cut down a tree. And when he hacked and hacked and hacked at that tree, it fell into the forest. The other boys laughed. Who will you marry, a deer, a fox, maybe a rabbit? And so he just shrugged and off he went. And soon he found a little house in the woods. But no one lived there, obviously, for a long time. He sat down with his backpack and he pulled out his food and he ate. He had a crust of bread and some cheese, and from the corner came a little mouse. She said, "Oh, sir, what are you doing here?" And he was, startled. Here was a mouse talking to him. He said, well, I'm searching for a bride. She said, well, here I am. I can be your bride. He said, no. You're a mouse, a talking mouse, but you're a mouse. She said, no, you don't know what I am. But he ate, and then she gave him a little sleepy draft. He drank it and he fell sound asleep. And through the night, she took out fully to marry her. In the morning, he had this in his head. Oh, maybe she is not so bad after all. Maybe I could love a mouse. And he went home through the forest again. Now the other brothers, they told stories of their partners, their new special friends, and he couldn't really say he was in love with a mouse. His father said, a partner needs to know lots of things about a kingdom. A bride needs to know how to run a kitchen, how to run the looms, how to take care of the entertainment. So I want each of you to go back to your partner, your special person, and have them bake a loaf of bread. So they each went in their directions. And of course, the third son, he went straight to the house. And when he arrived, the little mouse came running out. Are we to be married? Are we to be married? And he said, no. My father wants you to bake a loaf of bread. Well, that might be difficult for a mouse. But the third son, he ate his crust of bread and his cheese. And of course, she gave him another sleepy draft and he went sound asleep. And while he was asleep, she called in all of her mice friends. They had jobs. They went out into the fields, they gathered grains, and when they brought them back, they stomped them with their little feet and ground them, and before long, she had a loaf of bread, tiny, but a loaf of bread. And in the morning, she said to him, here, take this to your father. It was a nut. It was a large nut, and a shell. He put it in his pocket and he left. And when he arrived back home, his other brothers had bread, not all very tasty. The princess in that first kingdom, she wasn't really a baker, but she made an attempt. Now, when the king was handed this nut, he said, "What is this?" "Well, open it, father." And so he opened the nut, and there was this tiny loaf of bread. And he tasted it and he said, "Oh, by far, this is the best bread, the finest bread I have ever tasted." Well, the two sons were like, "Oh, this can't be the deciding factor. Another test, father." And so he said, all right. I want each of you to have your bride to be weave some cloth. And so they each went in their direction. The third son, of course, went to the little house, and there was the mouse. "Are we to be married? Are we to be married?" she said. And he said, no. He was a little leery about marrying a mouse. He'd picked her up and she was so soft and so sweet, but she was still a mouse. He said, you must weave some cloth. So he sat down, he ate his crust of bread and his cheese, and of course she gave him another sleepy draft, and off he went. And she gathered all of her friends and then told of her dilemma, and they all went out into the fields and gathered flax and cotton and all the things to make cloth. They spun and they wove, and by morning he was awake and she handed him another nut. So he took it, put it in his pocket. She said, "Take it to your father." And so he did. Well, when he arrived, of course, the other two sons, they had cloth. The first one, it would cover you. It wasn't a great cloth, but it would cover you. And the second one, the farmer's daughter, well, she had been weaving all her life. It was a little coarse, but it was warm. But there was this nut. So the king opened the nut, and out floated this cloth. It was like gossamer. It was so light and airy and beautiful. He said, "Oh, by far, this is the most beautiful cloth. I must see the woman who weaves this cloth, and all of you," he said, "I must see, bring your brides to be, and we will have weddings. We will have a huge ceremony and invite everyone in the kingdom. Please bring them." So all of the boys left. And when the third son arrived at the house, she said, "Are we to be married?" The mouse was just so excited. "Are we to be married now?" And he said, yes, we are. We are to be married. She said, "Oh, this is wonderful." Well, he ate his crust of bread and his cheese, and of course she gave him another sleepy draft, and off he went to slumberland. And while he was asleep, she gathered her friends, and they created a carriage and a dress for her of gray velvet. And she employed mice to pull the carriage, and by morning she was ready to go. And so he knew this was it. They walked through the forest and to her father's house, to the castle. He was worried. What would his brothers say now when he showed up with a mouse? But over the days, he had grown to love her, and she was so sweet and so generous and such a spirit. But when they arrived, well, the two brothers were there, but the oldest said, "What is this? You bring a little carriage with mice? I knew you were a dreamer, brother. This is ridiculous." And he kicked that carriage up into the air and it landed in the river. The third son had no idea how much he loved that mouse. And as he was mourning her loss, out from the river came a beautiful carriage, diamond studded, led by 4 gray mares. And in it was this princess dressed in gray velvet. Everyone was astonished. She said, "There was a spell cast on me, and the only way I could break that spell was if one brother fell in love with me and one brother tried to destroy me." And so the spell was broken and all were married. Now, the king still couldn't decide who would be king. But this mouse princess said, "Your third son has no need for your kingdom, for I have my own, and he will rule with me until our heir takes over." And the first son, well, his wife also said, "We don't need this kingdom. I have my own also." And so the middle son, who married the farmer's daughter, was made king. And he was a sensible, fair, and good king, just like his father. And they all lived happily ever after, if you can believe. Thank you.
Well, that was just delightful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I like to tell something. I didn't expect the second son to become the king. That was a sort of a twist. Normally you have the mouse princes and they rule the kingdom. That's how we ended. I liked it. It was so different. I don't
Well,
want
I had found a Swedish version where the mouse princess, she offered her own kingdom. So then I just thought, well, the first one should go with. So it was kind of my own twist, but I like that the middle son, the middle child never gets the full benefit. So I like that the middle son became king.
I'm the middle daughter.
Oh,
Which brother kicked the carriage?
the first one.
The first one.
Yes.
So, and then what did he get at the end?
He went to rule with his princess.
Oh.
So we don't know what his fate is.
Uh-huh. All right. We kind of want him to get a little bit of punishment.
Yeah, we do.
But it turned out
Had
what
work in his punishment.
Yeah, it turned out what he did was necessary. It reminds me of how in some versions of the story about the princess who loses her ball in the well, and then a frog brings it up. According to some versions, she kisses the frog and he becomes the prince. But in some versions, she gets so fed up with the frog's demands that she throws it against the wall, and that is the thing that breaks the spell. So once in a while, once in a very rarely, that destructive impulse is part of what breaks the spell.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I love fairy tales, but maybe because I think everything, has a magical part to it.
Now, isn't it a shame that we in the US, because I'm still a USA person, that we don't have any indigenous fairy tales, right? They're all from the old world. Can you see modifying that story a little bit to, instead of a king, make it the local ranch owner or something? Well, are you
Oh,
interested in
sure.
modifying it like that?
I could, yes. And it has, it is told um, sometimes as just a farmer who has three sons, and um, there is no royalty in it.
Okay, so then it
But
could
it
be.
could be told as a rancher who has a lot of cattle and
Uh-huh. But you agree, right? The fairy tales are not really indigenous to the USA.
no, we
Am I
tell
wrong?
tall tales.
Tall tales, but not these kind of transformational
Right.
ones.
No, we have more like coyote tales, trickster tales, indigenous tales, but
Pecos
not,
Bill,
not fairies and elves and talking
Well, the,
mice and
the
things like
the
that.
coyote and trickster, that's it sounds like
Coyote.
that's from the Native American tradition.
That's what
right.
I'm saying. I think if we have those kinds of stories, they're usually from the Native American.
Hmm. Now, it was not
Yeah.
very politically correct. Excuse me. It was not very politically correct that she kept drugging her her would be, right? That's not that's not really accepted anymore.
You know, there's another story that I tell from the Ozarks. I live in
Uh-huh.
Missouri, so there are the Ozarks, and a number of those tales that came over from from Great Britain,
Hmm.
came through Appalachia,
Ireland, yeah.
ended up in the Ozark Hills. And so there is a one of Beauty and the Beast, where in the end, the woman does put a sleepy pillow under his head and gives him some kind of sleeping potion so he won't wake up when his wife tries to revive him.
Hmm. But
So
why did the princess, the mouse princess, have to drug him? What function did that really fulfill each time?
I think she didn't want him to know how she processed
Ah.
those things that she needed to do.
Mm-hmm. It had to
That
be done in secret.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, in the beginning, he had to make she had to make him fall in love with her, no? For that also.
Yeah.
Well, did she? But
Don't give them too much. Don't give too much away.
I
but
love
she,
the fact that he did fall in love with her, and I think you express it that she was so sweet and she was so gentle and she was kind, and that he really came to appreciate her essence, and that was beautiful.
she was sweet and gentle, but especially from a man's point of view, I'll tell you that she was so enthusiastic.
And yeah,
That
that's
is
true.
what you really want.
That
Yes.
was great. Yeah,
Well, she knew if
that was good.
somebody fell in love with her, she would. That was half the battle.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And that motif of that the tree, one should go where the tree falls is an interesting one. And as you pointed out, one can influence which way a tree falls. So they did that. And there's so many stories of people following a deer, and the deer leads them to
Yes.
something. And here in India, I believe there's a tradition of following horses, following a group of horses to learn something or find something. And I always think, well, again, you can influence which way the herd of horses is going to run, but
Hmm.
you're not supposed to think about that, I think. All right.
Meet the Mavericks in the West here.
Uh-huh. I worried about the hygienic elements of the mice stomping on the grains. Being a miller myself, or named after a miller, I'm interested in how milling is done. And of course, people stomp on grapes to make wine, right?
Yeah.
That's a famous thing. So, okay, let the mice stomp on the, I'm sure they washed their feet beforehand.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Good.
Okay, thank you for at least for letting me hear a fairy tale that I'd never heard before.
You're
Great.
welcome.
I have to say, this was a wonderful session. Just
Yes.
everybody, every single, it was a gem. There was gems. You know, you could string us all together. I think and make a beautiful necklace. And the listeners and the comments and just, and it was such a variety of stories, and were all wonderful, wonderful.
Spellbound.
I'm
Yes.
I'm very proud to be part of this
Yes. Same here.
endeavor of yours, Eric.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. Appreciate you very, very much for giving
Thank
us
you.
this stage.
Yes,
Thank
My
you very
very
thoughts
much.
much,
too.
Eric. Yes.
Thank you, Eric, for this platform and for
You're
all the encouragement.
most
Mhm.
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's stop recording and then we can say good night or good morning. Here, we're going to stop recording.